So, team, I wanted to get into the details of the partisan back and forth now over a bill that should be entirely bipartisan. Democrats are showing us who they are here. Democrat leadership and others showing us that they're disgraceful and they just don't care. They really don't care. I know this is the kind of rhetoric that you often hear about politics, but this time it's really true. They don't care about the suffering that's going on. They think it's more important that they get money for windmills and solar power, right? That's just a fact. That is what is going on right now. There was a bipartisan bill that had agreement all the way through, and they waited the last minute and said, nope, sorry. I mean, this is just the most bare-knuckle negotiating tactic you can think of. You bring somebody in. This is classic. You know, you could do this with any kind of contract. You bring somebody in and you say, hey, let's just work on this together. And that way, when we get to the end, we'll know that this has come from both of us. And so then it's just putting the signatures on it. And you do that and you do that, but you've got a deadline. And then at the last minute, you say, sorry, no, want to do a whole new one before the deadline. And now the deadline is really just public pressure. Right? So that's what they're trying to do. It's disgusting, but this is what the Democrats have gone with. I'll get back to that. I wanted to tell you a different story, though, because you're seeing this now. If you're looking for it, you're seeing the way that this virus, which is very, very dangerous, and I think I'm taking it as seriously as anybody. And I know some of you, by the way, have been writing into me to say that you think that I'm too negative on this, or I'm trying to just go where the facts are. I think I believe the administration's position on this. Trump is saying things like it's very bad, and we have to be very serious about this. So unless you think that, I don't know, I don't think it's going to be the catastrophe that many on the left are saying. I don't think we're going to have millions of people dead. I think it's going to be in the range of a bad flu season. That's what I think will happen. That's just my guess. It's a guess. I wouldn't even say it's a prediction. But there are efforts underway in the media to make sure that Trump is getting blamed for this in ways that are bizarre. And this is the story that was making the rounds last night. And you really, you look at this and you end up saying, do they have any decency whatsoever in the media at all? Or forget decency, well, but do they have any honesty? Are they willing to be honest about what they're doing, what they're saying? There is a very troubling trend whereby many people in the media like to say, as a means of attacking Donald Trump, that he has overstated the effectiveness of chloroquine or hydroxychloroquine, similar drug. He has overstated the effectiveness of what is generally an anti-malaria drug for treating this. That is not true. That's a lie. He has not overstated it. He has said he is optimistic, he is hopeful, but he has also said it could be nothing we don't know. And he's been very, very clear and explicit on that point. Now, I mentioned to you yesterday that there was a news story making the rounds. This was from yesterday morning, of 3 people in Nigeria who overdosed on chloroquine. We'll just say chloroquine. It might be hydroxychloroquine, but on chloroquine in Nigeria because they were worried about coronavirus. Now, I understand that we live in a time when people will do things like the Tide Pod Challenge, and there had to be these public service announcements that drinking bleach will not prevent you from getting coronavirus. It will probably kill you doing that. That there are people that they panic and they do very, very foolish things. The reason the Nigeria situation, remember, 3 people in a country 5,000 miles away, a country of 180 million people, 3 people die from taking too much chloroquine. I'm assuming not under medical supervision of any kind. And all the headlines, all the stories are in response to Trump overpromising, or in response to Trump's comments on, and they're tying this to Trump just because it's a means of attacking him and keeping the story going that he has overpromised on chloroquine, which is not true. He has not. He keeps saying, I'm hopeful. And then Fauci comes out and says, yeah, look, we don't want to get too far on this. The president's hopeful. I'm saying we just don't know. We're looking into it. But the president's hopeful. We understand what that word means. It doesn't mean, yeah, it's great. Let's get out the champagne and this is a big victory dance moment. Okay. So they ran the story in Nigeria, and I pointed out, I said, why is this even a news story? Maybe it's a news story in Nigeria, but I mean, Americans, we lost 100 Americans in the last 24 hours to coronavirus. I don't think that we need to hear about 3 people that did something that, look, it's sad, and I feel badly for the same way I feel badly for people that, believe what they see on the internet and then, lie down in traffic and videotape it because they think it's cool, or, the people that lose their lives trying to take a selfie near the Grand Canyon or some other, monument and they fall down the ravine. I mean, you feel badly for these people, but it's really not this isn't like a public health emergency. The mistakes that some people are making, this is just people making very bad choices. Well, we have an even more extreme version of this and remember, I'm telling you why the media likes to run with these stories. It's because it's a way of attacking Trump. So NBC News yesterday ran with this story. Arizona man dies after ingesting chloroquine in an attempt to prevent coronavirus. And they ran these quotes from this woman. And by the way, BuzzFeed, and there were a whole bunch of news outlets that all went with this version of the story. I think Politico might have had one too. Quote, and they went to this, the now widow of a man died, his wife is in the hospital. They both, the story says, took chloroquine because of Trump. And they then went to ask this woman who's been hospitalized for this what went on. Remember, now they've elevated this. This is a national news story, my friends, a national news story. And they said the following, quote, we saw Trump on TV, every channel and all of his buddies, and that this was safe. Trump kept saying it was basically pretty much a cure. She implored Vaughn Hilliard, the journalist behind this just debacle, educate the people, don't listen to Trump. Okay. You might think to yourself, hold on a second. Why is this the president's fault? How does the president being held responsible for this? This seems quite strange. A few things here. First of all, the people here, the 2 people that are, remember, national news story. We're in the middle of a pandemic. The media is supposed to be all hands on deck for the benefit of the American people, giving us necessary information. NBC News, one of the largest corporate media conglomerates in the country, right? One of the big 3, CBS, NBC, ABC. And they're running with this story. And you might say, well, hold on a second. What are the facts here really? Because these people, these 2 individuals, one is now dead, did not ingest chloroquine, the drug. And this was not made clear in the headlines and the way this was shared. They ingested chloroquine phosphate. Chloroquine phosphate is plant aquarium or fish aquarium cleaner. It is a cleaner for aquariums. And if you look at it, it has on it a big label that says poison, not for human consumption, or dangerous, do not consume. It could not be any more obvious to a person that pays attention that this is not something that you should do, but they left that out. So their story runs around. I saw tens of thousands of retweets and shares and likes and everything else about this story. Look at Trump. His overly optimistic view of chloroquine is resulting in more death. That is the media. That's why they did this. And then you say, hold on a second. They didn't even take the right drug. And I hate to have to explain this, but I guess I have to. If a doctor tells me you need more sodium in your diet, and I put sodium cyanide on my steak and eat it, that's on me. That's my fault. All right? We can't hold people responsible for the very unintelligent decisions that others make, not based on the advice they were given, but based on their own lack of processing power to figure out what the advice really was. The president, Dr. Fauci, and others have talked about, New York State has trials going on right now using chloroquine to try to treat coronavirus. Because people are talking about the possibility of chloroquine being useful, because people are talking about the possibility that this may lower the mortality rate of, we'll have to see, does not mean that anyone who brings this up, it doesn't mean that anyone who brings this up is responsible for someone taking an entirely different drug, entirely different substance that happens to have chloroquine in the name. I mean, my point about sodium and sodium cyanide, I think, is quite, sodium is in your body. You need it. It's salt. Sodium cyanide, as you probably figured out from the name, is poisonous. Highly, highly toxic, will kill you. So why is this buried in the story? Now some of them have said, yeah, we didn't really, I'll try to see if I can find one of the, and just so you know, Jon Favreau, who is a speechwriter for Barack Obama and has over 1 million Twitter followers, very, very well-known guy on the left. He's kind of one of the smug Obama, younger people in the Obama White House, who's part of the Pod Bros, the podcast Pod Save America crew. He tweeted out last night, the president is directly responsible. So I'm not pretending that they're tying this. This is a guy with a large platform who is straight up saying that two people who are told, maybe sodium in your diet is a good thing, and do the equivalent of ingesting sodium cyanide, not asking a doctor, not even doing a Google search before they do it, that's the president's fault. This is moronic, right? People who say this are morons. This Jon Favreau guy, I mean, I would love, it would be great to see him try to debate this point with anybody, really? The president's talking about something and someone hears that and does something really stupid that has nothing to do with what the president said, but chemically has nothing to do with what the president said, biochemically, and the president's responsible? But see, this is what, we all know this is going on right now. This is a story. You might say, Buck, why are you talking about this so much? Because this is what the media's mission right now is. You think their mission is, because they'll tell you this, to make sure that we get all the information we need and, that they're being responsible with making sure that people hear everything they need to about this. That's not what their main mission is. Remember what they've been saying for the last 3 years. Remember what they have been telling the American people. The media has been claiming the president's a traitor, that he's a clear and present danger, that he's corrupt, that he should be removed from office, that he could start a nuclear war at any moment with North Korea, that he started a war with Iran that never happened. We've heard all these things. They still believe all of that. They haven't suspended any of that because we're in now an actual crisis after they've lied to us about crises for years. So what are they going to do? Well, they're going to try to use this crisis as a battering ram against Trump and anyone who supports him. They are unleashing a ferocious get everybody you can around Trump and crush them right now because they know people are scared and they're leveraging the mob mentality. So they'll lie about what people say. They'll try to, and they'll do exactly what Favreau does here. Trump is responsible. Two people it's sad, but it's true, very stupidly drank fish tank cleaner because it sounded like a word that the president said that he did not tell anyone to take on their own or without, medical supervision. Never happened. Didn't say it was going to cure anyone. Explicitly said it's not necessarily even helpful. We don't know. That's Trump's fault. If you believe that these two people drinking fish tank cleaner, if you believe that that's on Trump, you can believe that literally anything is on Trump. You can find a way to put anything on Trump. And, that's what they've been doing, though, isn't it? I guess that's not new at all. It's just a reminder that even now, when we are all worried about our health, we're worried about the health of our loved ones, we're worried about the future of this country, worried about the economy, we have done a total about-face. Listen to me 3-6 months ago. I was telling you when the country was good. I was saying, don't listen to people that are claiming catastrophe this or this is terrible, whatever. I said, enjoy this time because it will not last. I played that prediction for you on the show. It was true. Now we are in a catastrophe. Now we are in a really difficult circumstance. And for those who believe the virus isn't that bad, guess what? The government and the economic consequences alone are a catastrophe. Well, no matter what you think about the real threat of the virus, I think the threat is substantial. Some of you listening to this think it's markedly less substantial than I do. But the government shutdown of the economy is as much of an economic crisis as we've ever seen, especially if it continues. but they'll put anything they can on Trump. Doesn't matter how dishonest it is, doesn't matter how grotesque. They'll do anything they can right now, and they're not going to change. And the same way that the left cared so much about, and I remember this, I was in the Iraq office of the CIA, crunching, doing what little, CIA cubicle warriors, coffee makers do. I was crunching numbers, and I did it overseas too. And I got to downplay that because otherwise, the left will come after me. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Super Delta Ninja guy, whatever. I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I remember crunching the numbers and looking at it and recognizing that the anti-war left, they wanted everyone to know about everybody that came back in both wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. They wanted. Now, I'm okay with wanting to raise greater awareness about the sacrifice that our warriors are making. I'm fine with that. What I'm not fine with is how it stopped under Obama. That's right. All of a sudden, the deaths that were happening in Helmand province and Kandahar and southern Afghanistan, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Marines and airmen and infantrymen from the Army dying, much higher rates than died in Afghanistan in the last 4 years of the Bush administration, for example. The greatest number of casualties in Afghanistan happened under Obama. How many people even know that? Because they didn't care. The media, the left, the anti-war movement, they didn't actually care about stopping the war. They didn't care about the deaths as much as they cared about making sure that it hurt the right and that it would not hurt the left. You will see that same mentality playing out in the weeks, I guarantee you, in the weeks and months ahead from the left over this coronavirus. And they will be vicious about it and absolutely unprincipled.
Now Congress must demonstrate the same bipartisanship again and join together to pass the Senate bill as written and avoid playing any more partisan games. They have to get together and just stop with the partisan politics. And I think that's happening. I got a call a little while ago. I guess they're getting closer. It should go quickly. And it must go quickly. It's not really a choice. They don't have a choice. They have to make a deal. This should not be a time for political agendas, but rather one for focusing solely and squarely on the needs of the American people. We are going to save American workers, and we're going to save them quickly. And we're going to save our great American companies, both small and large. This was a medical problem. We are not going to let it turn into a long-lasting financial problem.
I hope the president's right about that last part. I worry, though, because there's so much at stake in terms of power for the left right now, and they know it. They want to tear Trump down. They also want to get things that they could not get in normal times. They are exploiting this crisis. I'll walk you through how and what we should do in response to that.
When we started this morning, there were 35,224 cases this morning. Right now, as of the latest numbers, there are 41,708 cases in the United States today. That means we've had an additional 6,484 cases today while the Democrats are blockading. And by the way, where are the Democrats? C-SPAN doesn't show this whole chamber often, but it'd be nice if they did, because that entire side of the chamber is empty.
Ted Cruz fired up, among others, on the Republican side of the Senate for what really was a betrayal of this moment, a betrayal of the American people by the Democrats, a betrayal of the spirit of bipartisan compromise that should be the reality of our legislators when they're dealing with a crisis like this. It's appalling, absolutely appalling what the Democrats have done. Everybody knows it. Everybody sees it. And yet we're supposed to move on like it's not that big a deal that they've done this and just cave to them on everything. I mean, here was really the most brazen moment in this whole thing. Nancy Pelosi gave a little speech, but notice how no one's even talked about Joe Biden doing his version of the coronavirus briefing yesterday. Pelosi came out and just said, I mean, she did the equivalent of a political hostage video. And here is her, she is the terrorist in this analogy. And here is her demand. Play 17.
The Affordable Care Act stands today among the great pillars of American health and financial security: Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, and the Affordable Care Act. Now we find ourselves in the depths of one of the most serious health and economic emergencies our nation has ever faced. The protections of the Affordable Care Act are more important now than ever. But right now, in the middle of the coronavirus, the Trump administration is in court suing to tear down the entire Affordable Care Act, every last protection and benefit. If President Trump succeeds in striking down the ACA in court, gone is the ban on insurers putting limits on your health care. Gone are guaranteed essential health benefits and free preventive services. Gone are young people staying on their parents' insurance until age 26. Gone is the health insurance of 20 million Americans. And gone are the life-saving protections for more than 130 million Americans with pre-existing conditions. Today, therefore, I'm calling on President Trump to abandon his lawsuit.
Abandon the lawsuit or else. Obamacare stands or else. You're not allowed to go to the court to seek redress about Obamacare, which, by the way, is unconstitutional, always was unconstitutional. And Justice Roberts caved to the pressure, didn't want to be seen as somebody for all time that prevented the great Obamacare Act from being law. It was always unconstitutional. We go back to that debate. It was stunning. They were willing to change the plain meaning of language. A tax is a penalty is a tax, and you can regulate inactivity. It was always unconstitutional. This would be like, the federal government passing a law that everybody, and some are going to say yes, but everybody has to own an AR-15 and have a Bible in every room in the house, or else we'll hit you with an IRS penalty. You have to do these things. You have to buy these products and have them on hand, or else. But Nancy Pelosi, back to our moment here, saying that the president needs to do this. This has nothing to do with legislation. This is just demands. This is hostage taking to a T. It's exactly what she's doing, and this is why I've been saying Nancy Pelosi is not a decent or ethical person. It's just the truth. She's not a decent or ethical person. So let's all understand that. Let's all move forward from Nancy being the most horrible person in the Congress. And she here is showing us exactly what we are in store for, which is the Democrats are going to try to leverage. They finally have a moment. They've been doing all this process stuff and relying on the media with Russia collusion nonsense, the impeachment, and all the different mini crises, the genocide of the Kurds that never happened, the war with Iran that never happened, the emoluments clause. Trump's crazy. You got to remove him with usage of constitutional amendment. I mean, this whole thing is just nuts. Now they have something that's real, though, and they're going to just bludgeon this administration with it at every opportunity. It doesn't matter what the cost of people are. On the one hand, you have Democrats who claim to be the ones that they only care about science. Of course, they're the ones that they don't know they can't define for you what a woman is, but they care so much about science. And you have Nancy Pelosi coming forward with the opening salvo of this is about to become nakedly political and very, very, very ugly. And it's going to stay that way for as long as we're dealing with this up to the election. They will not relent. It doesn't matter that people are at risk. It doesn't matter that there's a real possibility here that this just completely look. It could get a lot worse than even I think it'll be. Than any of you listening think. We just don't know. We just don't know. But that's a true hostage-taking move from Pelosi. Pull away your challenge in the courts from Obamacare, or else we won't do this. It is disgusting. And there's also a lot of lies around this. There's a lot of things that are not true. But it's because, as we know, Democrats see this as an opportunity. Here's Lindsey Graham, Lindsey Graham knows exactly what to say to go on Fox and to have the Fox audience like him. And he sounds good when he's on TV. When it comes to action, though, Lindsey Graham is less reliable, we could say. But play clip 10, though, because he is saying something correct on this one. Play 10.
You see this as an opportunity to do things you couldn't do otherwise. Republicans see this as an opportunity to do things that have to be done now to save lives. I have never been more disgusted since Kavanaugh.
I think that's true. This is the ugliest thing you've seen in Congress since Kavanaugh. And this, let's be clear, probably has, well, depends on what ends up happening here, but it could have. The stakes, in a sense, are higher than with Kavanaugh, but I do think they're going to pass a bill. Maybe by the time you hear this, they'll even have passed some kind of rescue bill. But it's likely Pelosi will get a lot of the little goodies that she sought. So she actually gets what she wants in this process. And once again, we see the Democrats act in bad faith and are rewarded. The Democrats are the side of acting in bad faith, doing things that any fair-minded person would say are gross and wrong. That is what the Democrats do. And once again, that's their approach in this. So it's troubling, to be sure. But the things that they can't normally get, that's really what they're going. They want same-day registration. They want to change voting laws. They want to make sure that they can do things that help them win elections. That's what they're holding this stuff up for. That's what they're making these determinations with that in mind. And they're ramming a political agenda down the throats of the American people that they know they couldn't normally get done in ordinary times. So they are absolutely exploiting this crisis. And then there's also this brainless line of attack against the Republicans that the corporate bailout is cronyism, corporatism. No, we shouldn't have a bailout for the airline industry, shouldn't have a bailout for the hotel industry, shouldn't have a bailout for Boeing. This is not a normal bailout. This is not that these companies acted poorly, made bad decisions, and should suffer the economic consequences. This is the country has been hit with a pandemic virus, and the government is mandating that they cease operations. But while they've ceased operations, they continue to carry expenses. What is the single biggest expense that most businesses, almost all businesses, have? Anyone want to answer that little trivia question? Personnel, payroll, staff. That's the most expensive thing that most, not all, but most businesses deal with, right? Paying their people. This is why when you hear things, I mean, Biden gave a press conference yesterday, and it's an embarrassment. I mean, Biden, he looked confused, as he tends to. Why is he holding a press? He has no power. He has no authority. He's acting like if he were in charge, this is what he would. It was the reason you're not seeing more about it is just from an objective optics point of view. It was weak. It was weak sauce. You're like, what is this all about? But here's a talking point that Biden said that you'll hear from a lot of other people. Play 18.
President Trump and Mitch McConnell are trying to put a corporate bailout ahead of millions of families. It's families. It's simply wrong. We should be focusing on families. The White House and the United States Senate Republicans have proposed a $500 billion slush fund for corporations with almost no conditions. And you don't have to tell Americans where it's going to go for months. You don't have to explain what you did with it. The Trump administration could allow money for stock buybacks, for executive pay. Republicans refuse to increase Social Security at the same time, to forgive student loans, to take the necessary steps to stop evictions, ensure food and nutrition for vulnerable families. Senator McConnell should immediately allow a bipartisan vote on aggressive measures to help small businesses, workers, communities, so they reflect what they need and so they can get moving, so we can help them now.
This was all negotiated with the Democrats all along. The corporate slush fund that he's talking about here, which is the exact same talking point, the slush fund, the $500 billion slush fund, would allow businesses to stay in operation. What do businesses do? They employ people. And if they have too many restrictions in place for what they do with the money, then they can just refuse to accept the money. And you know what they'll do to cut costs? What's the first thing they'll do in most businesses when they have to cut costs? Let people go. So who do they think employs individuals? You're really seeing this divide between government bureaucrats, people that work in the information economy, journalists, podcasters, the people that are able to work from home pretty easily. And they're very dismissive. So what if this is a lockdown for a while? So what if people are losing? We'll make them whole. We'll bring back their business. We'll bring or not. They don't really care. But they're very dismissive about all of this, as if the country isn't in a completely uncharted waters here of an economic shutdown that's going to mean that there are people who don't have money for essentials right now. They don't have it. And they also want to be able to get a paycheck from their employer. How long do we think we're going to be able to sustain people with checks from the government if we have millions and millions of people who are eliminated from their jobs? The more to the point, the Democrats were agreeing to all of the provisions all along, and then all of a sudden Pelosi came in with the talking point with the usual class warfare claptrap. And here's what you hear. Here's Pelosi saying the same thing that Biden said. Play 20.
We can say it when we have a deal, and that could be imminent in a number of hours. I can say that we're all receptive to getting something done. We all know that everybody doesn't write their own bill, that it's a series of compromises, and that we think the bill has moved sufficiently to the side of workers with the respect. We actually are talking to the employers about what they think the traffic will bear and the rest. So this isn't a conversation with workers and not with the airlines or other industry, right. Hospitality, parking, you name it. You go to restaurants, you go down the list, and trying to be discreetly trying to address their problems. So it is not a one-sided conversation on our part. However, things like a $500 billion slush fund was really insulting.
$500 billion slush fund, there you go. You know what's insulting? Nancy Pelosi's bill demanding corporate board diversity increases, college debt relief, election auditing, same-day voter registration, airlines offsetting their carbon emissions. As Ted Cruz said, what the heck do windmills have to do with any of this right now? Trump should make her answer for this. If I were President Trump, I would go on TV and I would just read off some of the most onerous provisions in this that Nancy Pelosi came forward. Because people, even if they get a deal the next day, two, who knows? But people should know. They should know the truth about what a reckless maniac Nancy Pelosi is willing to be at this point in time in her relentless lust for power and control. And that point about the Democrats trying to get more now than they normally could, remember that, because that's not going to stop. There is an increasing chorus. You can hear people now on the left, and some of them, by the way, from the broader, there's this intersection of the scientific and policy communities where people have some science background, but they're really more policy advisors. And they see this as a means of instituting a lot of what we would consider in normal times to be statism and keeping it for the long term. Be cautious of this. They're going to start coming after individual rights and liberties in the name of protecting us. Just like they did after 9/11, by the way, with terrorism. That was a Republican administration, and it happened. There were things that went on there that should not have gone on after 9/11, and that in retrospect, people that are honest on the right have said, this was excessive, this was too much, we shouldn't have done this, we shouldn't have done that. I'm not saying everything. I think overall the Bush administration was acting in good faith on this stuff, but there were certainly excesses. And that was a Republican administration with a very clear and defined, well, I should say a very clearly human enemy, at least. I mean, now we're dealing with a virus. So the Democrats, if they can get their way, would go absolutely for as much control as they possibly can. And that's what this legislation is all about. But also you're hearing more noise about this in the policy community, in the medical policy community. And keep in mind that, you know, you could have in 12 months' time a Democrat administration come into power. And that's really the hope. So there's an attempt now to push for things that, one, Nancy Pelosi is just going to get what she can in the meantime, while the Democrats don't have control of the Senate. And it looks like they waited until some senators had to self-quarantine before they decided to bail on this. Republican senators, really sleazy stuff from the Democrats. But they're also trying to push narratives now for what they're going to do in 12 months. One thing that I know is just anecdotal, but I do find it troubling about the future of small businesses and what's going on here. You know, in New York, we have probably the greatest, I think it is the greatest concentration of food delivery options anywhere. It's something that New Yorkers pride themselves on. It's true. I mean, you can, in normal times, I could sit here, you give me a cuisine and I can get it delivered to my apartment in 30 minutes. Any cuisine you can think of, anything. And we've been told that restaurants will stay open for carryout and delivery. They're dropping every day, more and more places, even that have takeout and delivery businesses and long-standing ones, shutting down. They need in-house dining to justify the costs of operation. They're shutting down. Every day, I'm seeing it as it's happening. It's like watching the erosion of the restaurant industry, the small businesses, bars, obviously, same thing. They're just slowly but surely every day dropping off. That's, for me, a symbol of what is happening across the country to small businesses right now.